Welcome to Lenovo Late Night IT, where we turn the latest topics upside down, shake them, and see what falls out. I'm your host, Baratunde Thurston, and today we're posing some essential questions about AI-powered automation. How does it help businesses save time and money? How will it force humans to adapt? And which of the 3 laws of robotics will be broken first? Here to lend her insight is Anima Anand Kumar. Anima is a director of machine learning research at NVIDIA, where she leads a group that develops next-generation AI algorithms. Anima is a passionate advocate for democratizing AI and has launched several open-source initiatives, efforts to increase reproducibility, and champion fairness in the industry. Now joining her is digital anthropologist Brian Solis. Brian is the global innovation evangelist at Salesforce, where he focuses on digital transformation, customer experience, and cognitive enterprise, among other things. I'm so looking forward to knowing what cognitive enterprise is, Brian. He also experiments with food tech on the side, but that doesn't count if he didn't bring enough food for the whole garage. Brian, Anima, welcome to the garage.
My pleasure.
My pleasure, too.
I want to start with definitions first. How do you define AI, intelligent automation, in the context of the workplace?
Artificial intelligence is how we make machines smart, to be able to think and ultimately act like us. And when we're talking about intelligent automation, it's end-to-end decision making, right? So think of a manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Everything from like raw materials to the manufacturing processes to ultimately supply and demand. That's so much information, so much complexity. Not one single person can handle that. But AI has the power to do it if you can give it all this different kinds of information, but also to look ahead and plan. If there is going to be a shortage in a few months, and if you can plan for that, if you can predict that it's going to happen, you can be much more ahead of the game.
Okay.
And that's what AI-enabled intelligent automation will yield.
That was a beautiful definition. It raises some questions, which I'll get to in a moment, but Brian, do you have any edits or additions to that?
Do I have? No. Who would after that? Honestly. As a digital anthropologist, the only thing I would say is that when we look at it from the relationship with humanity, is that if you're human, you're biased. And so the programming of that intelligence and ultimately to that decision making is where we have a lot to learn and a lot to practice. But the thing that I would say there is that there's also opportunities for insights. So it is an opportunity to augment that human relationship to help us actually be better, to see things we couldn't see, to do things we couldn't imagine before. And that's where I get excited about the future of all of this.
Intelligent automation sounds smart. It's got the word intelligent in it. But I want to come back to some of these examples of what does that look like in several different business contexts?
Think about cybersecurity, right? There is now so much of fraud. There can be all kinds of bugs that are introduced, and it's always like a cat and mouse game. And when enterprises and businesses have to make sure that their processors are safe, their customers are safe, their data is safe, how do you ensure this threat monitoring? What about the unknown? What could be now upcoming that's not yet discovered? And if you can train AI to discover anomalies or things that look different, that don't look like normal traffic or normal processes, you could be ahead of the game. And this is really critical, I think, for cybersecurity.
I want to build on that cybersecurity bit. Anything that's internet connected, right? So whether that's a phone, whether that's a beacon, whether that's your doorbell, that is increasing the threat exponentially. And so where intelligent automation comes in is that it's impossible for human beings to recognize all of those irregularities or other patterns in just the millions and millions of devices that are introduced and activated every single day. So that is an understated example of how big this is. But mostly, I do want to call out that mostly what we see today is repetitive process automation. And it often gets lumped in with intelligence. So for example, when COVID hit, you had airlines that had to massively refund customers beyond human scale. It would take human beings 100 years to process all of those refunds. And so RPA got introduced into the game. We're seeing a lot of examples of that. And those types of investments weren't on the immediate horizon. Those were years out in terms of digital transformation. So that rapid adoption of automation is now starting to lead into things like customer service with chatbots, which is still not intelligent automation. But where I think the promise is, and another example could be, is conversational AI, for example. So it'll understand what's the desired outcome from somebody on the other end of the screen and help them get to that outcome without an if this, then that type of programming.
So we're getting up to this point of talking about the intersection of intelligent automation with human jobs. What are your observations and your own personal thoughts about, are we going to be reducing jobs, or are we actually going to be generating more jobs? I've heard many different takes on this.
I think in the long run, we'll certainly be enhancing human creativity, and through that, the problems we can solve, right? So we are now being able to harness human capital to a much greater extent by replacing mundane jobs and repetitive jobs to ones where human intuition, human creativity is really important. We also at the same time need social security and other safety nets to make sure there is enough room for retraining, reskilling, so people can prepare for this next upcoming revolution where jobs will not be the same like they are now.
All automation affects human jobs. But I want to switch it up here. I want to talk about the leaders of today's economy.
Okay.
In that they're the ones that need to proactively recognize the answer to this question. You could, and ironically, use AI to help you figure this out as well.
The aspect of what AI can not do well today is to be able to quickly generalize, learn new skills, and humans have that innate ability. So it's that human-machine collaboration, right? So it won't be just inspecting a robot, but it'll be seamlessly working together with a robot.
Robot coworkers.
Yeah, it'll be like a robot dance. Like, think of it as
That's a lot of fun.
Like this.
Thank you, Brian. This is why we booked you. You can go now. What if people don't want to transform? Right? What if the repetitive work, what if the thing they've trained on, what if the thing they know, they're actually really happy with, and they don't want to 6 months upskill, retrain, 6 years from now do it again? How do you contend with our need for stability in this rapidly changing world?
Are you talking about AI or politics? Because
yes,
it's all the same thing. And this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to study the human side of disruption. It goes well beyond AI, right? I mean, if you look at how, for example, social media changed us, or our mobile devices changed us, and everything that continues to change
turned
us.
us into fiends.
I know I'm going through withdrawals right now. We don't want to change. That's just the reality of it. And it's really hard for people who maybe are still paying off college debt on a subject matter that they might have learned and went all in on, or that you have an entire career focus on a particular industry. That's where that leadership thing comes in, is that we know this is going to happen. So let's start incentivizing change. Let's get to the human psyche of transformation and motivate and incent people to want to do something different and find a new comfort zone.
And I think the primary emotion here is fear, right? Fear of the unknown, because stability, what it provides is, there is now a path that is already set, but that's also, I think, the cultural expectations we've had, that you go to college, you invest in studying something, and then you use that skill forever. And I think it's that conversation about changing expectations, right? That it's now lifelong learning, so you don't stop learning, you're always like embracing change. But you can only do that if you're in a position where there is a safety net, right? I mean, you have to have that level of comfort and the level of availability of resources.
And exactly, you're humanizing this and allowing for a lot of space that I don't think many of these conversations do. Do you think that some of this fear has to do with the language that we're using to describe what's happening? We're calling it intelligent automation, we're calling it artificial intelligence. What if we called it like augmented labor or making your life easier instead? How much does language play into the fear?
even, we call it disruption, right? And
Nobody wants to be disrupted.
Yeah. And Silicon Valley is all about move fast, break things. I mean,
Mission
we're breaking
accomplished.
things.
Yep,
So, I think it's like about building, right? Building a future together, and it's about human-machine collaboration.
Language plays an important role in everything that we do. At the same time, though, there's perspective as well. So this is where leadership, again, I'm going to keep harking on this. Transformation and disruption isn't for the workers. It's also for the decision makers in any organization today. A lot of their jobs could be automated as well or augmented. There's two moments of innovation or transformation. There's the aha moment, but the one that's most often is the uh-oh. Uh-oh.
From to uh-oh.
Right. And so I'd like to see what you were talking about, reframing this, being positive about the outlook of this, getting people to feel comfortable with how it's going to change them and improve their lives. I'd like to see the narrative change in that direction.
What are you seeing in terms of companies who are getting the intelligent automation thing right? Do you think most are kind of behind the curve here, getting it wrong? What's your assessment?
I think the pandemic has really created a chasm, right? Because the companies that adapted, that were already on the path of digitization or started with a digital foundation, were the ones that could easily just, have all the automation, and further work from home was seamless. But many other companies that didn't have that infrastructure, that didn't have that way of thinking, that always, expected people to come in and do things in person, found it harder to adapt. Yeah. And so it starts right there from the culture of where, it's a digital thinking, our processes already seamless, and then you can add AI and you can further make it enhanced.
With the thrust into digital first living, working from home, learning from home.
Crying from home.
Yes.
The whole thing.
Eating.
It's on my schedule. Crying.
That's fantastic. Mine, I need laughing on my calendar. I'm gonna put that.
I have breathe now.
Breathe now. That's great. Scheduled breathing is really
We all need that.
Very human thing to do.
That's why I'm still alive.
So with the digital shift overnight, agents, customer service agents, are among the most stressed out right now because they're taking in more calls, are coming into the call center, more are digital first engagements, and the technology is automation, whether it's intelligent or repetitive AI. These things exist to help them. So, for example, in a customer service environment, you could use AI to better manage the workload. It doesn't have to be straight X amount of hours. It could be based on how we're seeing trends for incoming things. But you could also use AI to take the transcripts of that conversation and help learn how to give that agent more time to be creative, rather than just trying to get them to an answer. And as a human being, right, when on the other side of the phone or on the other side of the chat or whatever it is, if we find that people are being more helpful or useful or delightful to work with, we're going to remember that. And so I think that's an immediate example of how we can think about AI differently to make people smile, but also to challenge ourselves as architects to stop that transactional mentality and bring in some warmth into the equation.
I'm liking this best case scenario conversation where the technology that we're deploying, the automated technology, is helping people, helping employees, helping workers. I think what I want to also hear though is, where do you think it's not working? What are some of your least favorite implementations of intelligent automation or repetitive automation where you're like, that's not a great place, or it's being done poorly? You don't have to name names, but I won't be mad if you do.
Well, I think to me, as you said, right, there is the danger of techno-utopia, right? So saying technology is the answer to everything, and if it has AI in it, it has to be amazing, right? No, everybody can slap AI to whatever they're doing, but the devil is in the details. How was this data collected? Was there even consent in terms of the data that was used, and how is it going to affect the person, right? Yeah. So even if it's the right decision or the wrong decision made by AI, what are the consequences?
Machines learn what we teach them. You kind of alluded to this earlier, Brian, and if we feed them garbage in, then they will feed us garbage out. And a lot of this is built on training data and specific sets of data to infer all kinds of things. So who's making sure that the data is representative, that it was collected with consent, the way you said? That to me seems like a potential disaster scenario for something well-intended, but horribly executed.
You see that already, right? In fact, the first studies around AI bias called Gender Shades was spearheaded by Black female researchers in AI. And what they saw was face recognition systems that are publicly available being extremely biased against darker skin tones, against women without makeup, right? Older women. So all these are usually not images that are available on the web, especially celebrity images. That's what the researchers collected, because they said, oh, I can get lots of images of the same person, so I can now train AI to recognize that it's the same
Only
person.
On the most perfect, well-made-up faces.
I know.
And lighter
and
faces.
photoshopped faces.
And not
right?
even real faces.
Yeah.
So machines are being trained on machine-manipulated images of humans.
Yeah.
To
There
tell
you
us who's
go.
human.
It's all a loop.
What a mess.
And we've come a long way, with the Black Lives Matter movement. There was so much awareness. Finally, the companies saw that, there is more liability and headache
yes, public
enabling
pressure
this,
works.
right?
Yeah,
So
Thank you for
we
doing
need
that.
activism too. We need that. And as AI researchers, we tend to think, okay, let me focus on the math here. Let me program this. But we need to get our head out of the sand and say, who is it affecting? How is it being used? What happens in terms of a wrong decision? Who is responsible here? In a way, we are all responsible.
So many of the decisions to deploy automation, especially in the workplace scenario, are made at the executive level and a management level, and they're kind of imposed on workers. You have to use this now. Your job is changing this way. Is anyone asking employees and workers what they want from automation? Maybe there's some really great use cases because there's a pain in the butt part of the process that they have to deal with that they would love some machine to help them with, but no one's asked them. Have you seen that go down somewhere?
We should spend more time talking to employees about not just AI, but digital wellness, aspirations, trajectories. The more we engage with our employees, the better they'll be for customers ultimately. But if you ask an executive before COVID, what AI strategy that they had within their organization, most, and I don't have the exact stat, but most of them just didn't.
Right. Why do I need that?
Yeah, they didn't even know how to describe artificial intelligence, and now we see all of this acceleration. So with us geeks, one of the things that we're looking at, when you move into a digital-first world, IT, CIOs, for example, they're just overwhelmed. They can't keep up with all of the shifts that need to happen, all of the adoptions across everything, not just AI and automation. Things like low-code or no-code tools are now starting to be deployed so that they're called citizen developers, but essentially just everyday workers can go and just build the things that they need to and not have to wait or be frustrated.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so
like citizen science.
Like citizen science, or
okay.
citizen journalists.
Connecting directly with people who are doing the work, who are creating value, who are building new things, who are designing. Those are the kind of jobs that'll be for the future.
Let's continue this conversation a little bit further into the future. Right now, I want to take a pause and play a weird, awkward game. We think tech experts should be able to explain their work to the general public. So we created a segment where we challenge our guests to describe their professions in simple, everyday language. Here's how it works. You're going to explain your jobs to each other as if you were on a first date. The goal is to be as lucid and as captivating as possible. So put on your game faces because it's time for Date Night IT.
Great.
Thank you for your enthusiastic response, Brian. You get to go first.
But give it my best shot.
Okay.
And mom and dad, if you're watching, we could finally know what your son does. All right. I study how technology is changing behaviors and then play that out at market levels and play that out over time so that I can help executives and governments make decisions about how they should change to be more relevant and meaningful. How'd I do?
That's deep.
How did he do?
That was fabulous.
Wow. I'm going to dock you a point because you brought your mom and dad into the date.
Oh,
and,
yeah, sorry.
That's not something I would advise. Not a good way to get a second date. Mom and dad, if you're listening.
Depends on the country, but
That's true. Fair point. Fair point. I retract
You're
my
culturally sensitive.
Western-oriented thinking. Ooh, you got the judge. Okay. Anima, why don't you give it a shot?
Okay, let me try. I built machines that can ultimately think and act like humans.
That's the winner.
I mean, so
I think that's the goal. That's the goal.
Talk about flex.
the thing is, Anima, Brian and I had opposite reactions to that because what I heard was a threat.
Oh, optimist.
Right? You're like, that
Hopeless.
sounds exciting. I'm like, that sounds terrible. And you were so honest and so to the point with it. Like, there was no room to interpret that in any other way. They're going to be like you, and soon.
Did you hear it in an accent like this?
I might have heard it in an accent.
Not
Terminator,
it, though. Not it.
Terminator
reference for
So
those.
that's the optimist,
But
right?
Brian, you were moved by this. You found this compelling. You said, I want a second date with the machine-human cloning person.
I mean, I was impressed.
Well, you were both impressed with
Thank
each
you.
other. I'm impressed with both of you. So enjoy that second date. That's not real, but fun to pretend. Thank you so much.
That was fun.
Yeah, let's not do that again.
Agreed.
No second date.
What's the role for accountability within automated systems, especially in thinking of workplace intelligent automation as an example? But in my real life, I have this car that claims it can, drive itself. It can't, but it can help me drive. And I've been a number of times on the road, on the highway, and it has slammed on the brakes. And there's nothing in front of me except a shadow from an overpass. Third time this happened, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. What happened?
What's hard is to figure out how the machine-human collaboration happens, right? Because you're saying in this specific scenario, don't bother about the shadow. But, in some other case, that shadow could be something falling on the car or, something else could be the case, right? So it's very hard for AI to take these very specific scenarios and generalize and try to come up with a way that balances safety versus comfort.
So then here's the follow-up. Are there things that we should not apply automation to?
I think to me, it's about taking a staggered approach, right? You start with saying, the more mundane, repetitive tasks, can we have AI first to do that more seamlessly, faster, more efficiently, and then little by little give it more challenging tasks. And so something like autonomous driving is very tricky because we are, most of the time it's okay, right? But it's a life and death situation when it really matters. So we call this safety critical situations. This accountability, right, also starts with creating standards. Going back to the face recognition example, right? If you look at the National Institute of Standards, right, when this whole field started, right, even the standard data sets there, right, to check whether a face recognition system is doing well or not was heavily biased against darker skin tones, right? You don't have representation in the standards itself. So it starts there. We have to create what are even the standards, how do we test them? So these are all problems that are solvable, but sometimes the incentives are not aligned. So we have to have independent bodies. We have to have academics have access to these systems to be able to test them independently, and that's what is missing now. The world has changed, so much has changed, and what we need are algorithms that are also more transparent. I think that aspect of it, how do we make AI humble? So, and that also relates to the hype, right? It's like when AI is not failing, we should also lower its confidence. How do we design algorithms that can alert and say?
Humble algorithms. I like that. Humble AI. That's a good business.
Good name for a venture capital company.
You gotta buy a domain name. Right now.
It's still out there.
I want to bring this back to the CIO, the CTO, in the sense of everything we've been talking about, to automate or not to automate, applying some accountability, keeping the human in mind and involving the employees. And based on all your life experience so far, what advice, Brian, do you have for a CIO or a CTO who's like, I gotta up my AI strategy game. I want to do some intelligent automation, but now what? Or maybe they're already deployed with something. How do they step up the game?
The burning platform that I think is on the minds of CIOs, CTOs, CDOs is how do we scale faster because we're being asked to do more and more with less and less. And so I think that being empathetic to the decisions that they have to make is probably a good place to start. And then empowering them to seek the answers, right? So yes, there's the roadmap of things we have to do to digitize.
And transform.
Right, so let's have some conversations. Let's do some research. Let's bring in some new minds who aren't looking at these new opportunities with old mindsets or legacy mindsets. And then let's also audit the capacity and the capabilities of our workforce and to see where we can help them grow, where they'll need to grow, and then what we need to hire for at the same time, and build out a human resources infrastructure that helps them move in that new direction. This really is a blank canvas. And with the right intention, but also the accountability, the transparency, and lastly, the intent to earn trust along the way is the right step to go. And I'll leave you with this. Technology is not the answer, and technology is not the problem. You know, it's a human thing. And in 2020 to 2021, the number one thing that, we just published this report, the number one thing that people said that they want to see in business transformation is for them to be more trustworthy. And if you look at the biggest dips of trustworthiness, basically we're all guilty of it. Technology companies are at the top of that list. And here we're trying to look to them to help us solve for this AI and automation opportunity. So earning trust is a real thing, and I would encourage any CIO, CDO, CTO to read the work of Rachel Botsman. She has this wonderful, it's just a short piece on Medium. It talks about the 5 things that you can measure by asking someone else to hold you accountable to those measures, not you measuring yourself, so you know where to start. And I think that's a great place for everybody.
That's beautiful and thoughtful. Thank you so much. Anima, do you have any advice for a CIO, CTO, or CDO?
I think to me, like the aspect of what Brian was saying, right? This empathy and communication. I think these are skills that become even more important in the next realm of leadership now. Whereas the traditional leadership was very much like, oh, I'm in power here. I make the decisions, right? Like, and kind of like trying to look strong, trying to dominate, versus now trying to listen, understand, and collaborate. And I think that's also a cultural aspect. If we are wanting to improve diversity and inclusion in these organizations, we also need leadership that is mindful to how people from different backgrounds, right, men versus women versus even people across the gender spectrum, how do we enable them to feel included, feel safe, feel like this is a healthy environment? I think removing a lot of the toxicity in more traditional kind of work cultures where it's like, let's move fast, let's get to the finish line, which is great. I love a race, right? I love deadlines. But how can you make it fun and inclusive? I think that to me is really important.
Well, this has been a really important conversation. Y'all are awesome. That's it for tonight's episode of Lenovo Late Night IT. Many thanks to our guests, Brian Solis and Anima Anand Kumar. I'm Baratunde Thurston, and I'll see you next time, unless I've been replaced by a robot, in which case, tell my story!